Hey, iCave fam, how we doing? Hopefully this is actually coming through at the right time. Good times. How is everyone? Say hi in the chat. Let me know that you can hear me all right, all that sort of stuff. Of course, if you can't hear me, you won't know that I've asked you to tell me that. There's not a lot we can do about that. How's everyone doing? Oh, right. So, the reason we're doing this today is I've had kind of a busy morning. Didn't have time to film something and then get it all ready and edited. So I thought I might as well do it live and we can have a proper chat and we can do all the good stuff. So, you can hear me great. That's good. We've got the big old microphone on the go. We're not using the AirPods or anything like that today. So, all good, everyone. So, what does everyone want to talk about? We can just go to some of the Apple sites. Now, I know we've been talking a lot this week about the new MacBook Pro that might not be Pro, but might be a MacBook. I think that would be a really interesting one. I think we'll have a little bit of a chat about that. There's a lot of people that have mentioned it. I think Sarambites has mentioned it as well a little bit now. I think Taylor Civ has mentioned it. So I think it's one of those things that I think people are kind of going, maybe. But yeah. Fire in any questions that you want to in the live chat. We're going to be here for about 20 minutes to half an hour, a little bit longer than the usual kind of the usual shows, but not like massively long. We're not going to do a 6-hour or a 12-hour or anything like that today. But yeah, how's everything going? Oh, so Lit 8, first subject that we've got down in the topics here is AirTags, and there's been a lot of stuff that's actually come out about AirTags just recently. Apple has released kind of some update stuff where they're going to be, I'm not sure if this has actually happened yet or if it's something that they're going to be doing over the next few weeks or months, that they're going to be doing things along the lines of basically making them louder, a little bit more shrill when they go off. It's going to more quickly inform people if they're being followed by an AirTag, all that kind of stuff. And I know there's been a huge amount of news about it and people going, oh, I can't believe Apple's done this. These tags have been around for a long time before AirTags came out. Apple, the reason that anyone even realizes this is that Apple built in safety stuff in the first place, which, you know, it's quite important to remember that the only reason we're even talking about this is because there were already safety things built in, and people knew that they were being followed because of the safety features. So I don't think anything actually particularly bad has happened. I think there's been a couple of cars that have maybe been tracked back to their owners' homes, you know, where someone stuck a magnet onto the AirTag, stuck that onto the vehicle, and basically worked out where people live. However, it's also quite possible that you could just follow a car. That's another thing that can happen as well. But yeah, I just think I think that this stuff that they're doing is really good. I think they're going in the right direction with it. I do wonder if this March 8th event is going to have a lot of these software updates announced as well. So things like going into the AirTags and revisiting that and talking through, because it'll be, bang on a year since the AirTags first came out, right? Sharon B says, Rennie Ritchie did a great video on AirTags. He absolutely did. That's actually where I've got some of the information that I'm sort of sourcing from here as well. There's some great articles out there, and obviously Rennie Ritchie is just an absolute goat. There's no question that Renee is one of the best channels about Apple on the internet by a long way. So, what have we got else here? I'm just going to run through some of the chat stuff. I see Lit8 in the chat. Hello. Yes, I do remember you. We've got Michael Moy here. We've got Sharon B from the Patreons. We've got Mac Daddy. We've got the guys from Constant Geekery. Hello. Yeah, Michael Moy, Aranjan Van Voigt. If you are watching and you're not in the live chat, come and say hello. Phil Rosaleek, who's always here, good work. Aidan Marshall, how you doing, Mr. Cords? Which I assume is how you say it. That makes sense. Yeah, who else is here? Matt Sonrajuan, great name. Very easy to say, thank you. Colin Amaldia, who asks, when will the MacBook Air be released? Now, it looks weirdly like the MacBook Air is going to come later in the year, so I think they're going to bring out some M2 stuff quite early. I don't think we're going to get that MacBook Air straight away. It looks like they're going to release it with this kind of MacBook Pro slash just MacBook, maybe. I think Colin is asking as well, will the new MacBook have a notch? If they're using the 13-inch design, then no. I think it will keep the bezel at the top and have probably the existing webcam in there, which is not the best, but it is better than no webcam at all. Hi to Peter Holdman, hi to Doc Nerd, Wave Ickle, Safa Albach. Yes, I do still think that we'll see M2 Pro and M2 Max later this year, especially if they are actually going to release the M2 at the beginning of the year. That makes sense. I do think that they might just bring out a base MacBook and a Mac Mini with the M2 inside, which is all about that efficiency. Then we get the sexier version of it with the MacBook Air later on. I think they're going to reposition the MacBook Air as the premium that it started off as. Remember, when the original MacBook Air came out, it was more expensive than a MacBook Pro. That's bonkers to think about these days. Bonkers seems to have become my new word, by the way. Has everyone noticed this? I keep saying it all the time. So sorry about that if it annoys you. I don't know if it's even a word they use in the States that much. But yeah, I think the MacBook Air is likely to go up to like a mid-tier, very much like, as I said in the video, the iPad Air. That's the mid-tier. That's the kind of beginning of the premiums. And I think that's where the MacBook Air should live. It's the thin, light, power efficient, quiet. It's kind of a luxury model rather than the workhorse, which is the MacBook Pro, and rather than the kind of economy model, which would be the MacBook. I'm hoping that this is what they do. I would like to have that 3-tier again, the good, better, best, if you like. And I think that would be nice. The MacBook Air becomes kind of the fashion model again, which would make sense with all the colours and stuff that we've been talking about. So, Michael Moy saying the Monterey issues are the Wi-Fi bug and memory leaks. Fixed by rebooting the system, which I do about once a week. Bluetooth battery issue 2, fixed with 12.2.1. So I've not really had many issues with Monterey, to be completely honest. I am running the betas. I guess memory leaks, that might be a thing that we have had a little bit of issue with. But again, I'm just doing reboots every so often. Once it starts to just clog up a little bit, reboot it. It really doesn't take long. We were doing the updates, I think, a couple of days ago as well, so that gives it an automatic reboot. And actually, when you're on the betas, because we get beta releases most weeks, and I'm sorry, Americans, it's not beta, it's beta, we get those releases kind of once a week anyway, so it's automatically kind of forcing you into that refresh, which is great. Euritech, hey, how you doing? Glad you're here. Mr. Cords, I have the new 14-inch MacBook, and the notch is as good as invisible, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, if you're in dark mode and you've got that bar at the top, it's not really going to show up. If you use the right wallpapers and stuff like that as well, if you're going to have a bright white screen, or you want the Windows XP fields with the hills and the sky, you know, you're going to see it. If you think about it and you want to just put something there to make it a little bit less visible, that's great too. Yeah. So what else have we got here? What about Reality OS in App Store logs? So these are the two stories that I'd actually got written down as well, because I was going to do a proper normal recording of the show. Decided that it was better to just have a chat with you guys and do this as a bit of an experiment to see if you guys enjoy this format as well. So Reality OS in App Store logs. So I've not seen what the detail of this is. I've just seen the stories online about it. But I think we all knew it's coming. I don't think there's really any revelation to it. It's kind of exciting when it's Apple themselves who are the ones kind of leaking stuff. It just feels nice. It feels fun when Apple are the ones that not mess up even, because they know that they've put it in there. But kind of confirming it. You know, you can't really say confirmed any more than Apple showing that it's there. That being said, Face ID was shown in the Big Sur code as well. Face ID was being developed for Mac. Doesn't mean that it's something that is going to be imminent. It doesn't mean that it's something that's going to appear any minute now. What it does mean is that, you know, it's being developed. We know that they're working on it behind the scenes, and that's interesting of itself. One of the websites that I really like to kind of dip into to find extra bits of information is Patently Apple, which is basically where they report on all the patents that Apple is filing for various different things. So I think that's it just gives you an idea of what they're working on, regardless of whether it's stuff that's actually going to happen or not. Now, I think we're all pretty aware that Reality OS is coming. What's everyone else's theories, though, on the MacBook Pros? Because I think this MacBook Pro story, the 13-inch MacBook Pro that apparently everyone's been working on through the Lunar New Year in China, which I guess is a big deal because that's one of their big holidays for the year. Does this feel like we've got a 13-inch MacBook Pro on the way? Do people agree with me that I think it's a MacBook, not a MacBook Pro? Do people think that maybe it's actually the 14 inches and stuff like that they're working on? Dylan DKT did put out a report, I guess we'll call it a report, that it was going to be the 14-inch chassis with the same ports but with M2 inside. Now, that kind of doesn't necessarily make too much sense, but Dylan's been very accurate in the past. Although, I don't know if this is true, but the way the guys were talking on the Genius Bar podcast the other week when they said about Dylan kind of leaving, that he was, I don't know if they were trying to get at the idea that he was just making stuff up and just being really accurate in prediction rather than actually having sources behind the scenes. I'm not sure, but whatever he was doing a good job of it. So James Apple is in the chat. Hey James, product will be the light of day. What about the? I'm not really sure what you're asking me there, James. Do you want to give that another try? But yeah, I think that this is probably going to be the MacBook Pro. I think this is rather going to be a MacBook, not a MacBook Pro. If they're going to take out the touch bar, they're going to give it the base chip. It's going to keep the not Pro display. It's going to keep the not Pro chip. Sounds like a MacBook to me, but I could be wrong on that one. Phil Rosaleek saying, I don't think it makes any sense Apple bringing out another 13-inch MacBook Pro. Neither do I. Oh, here we go. So James Apple's saying Digitimes is full of crap. Well, actually, they are 60%, 60.8% accurate, which is better than 50-50. So there's more chance of it being true than not, I guess. Just not a lot more chance. Sharon, there's too much conflicting speculation from legit sources that I'm genuinely confused about the MacBook lineup. Yeah, I get that, but at the same time, we had the Apple Watch, the Series 7. We all thought, Mark Gurman, John Prosser, Guoming Chi, all thought we were going to be getting the flat-sided design, and then it didn't come, but there was a delay. I do still think that they had to rework stuff. I feel like the one that we got is actually this rugged one that we've been talking about for years, because it has the thicker thing. They showed it being, people falling off bikes with it. I think this is the rugged one, the one with the thicker glass, and I don't think it was a retool. I think they just switched out which one they were going to put into production. I think they had both ready. They had the issues with the flat-sided, flat-faced design, and just went with, right, we can put the rugged one into production. Maybe they changed something about the aesthetic of it, but it came. So I think that's probably what happened there. And I think because of that, I think everyone's kind of a little bit nervous about actually putting information out there now. But Sharon, I agree with you, it's very confusing at this point. But marketing names, as I say, very difficult for anyone to predict. It's one of those parts of Apple stuff that is so locked down. I guess the only people that know are the people that are printing the boxes, and maybe those are literally done 2 weeks before the launch and everything just gets packaged and shipped. I don't know. I don't quite know how it works. Michael Moy says, I actually consider the MacBook Air as a MacBook Pro because of the CPU GPU performance. So the Air/Pro is really more about ports, screen size, and speakers. It's hard to differentiate on performance. Yeah, certainly when you're in the base level M series chips, there is no real performance difference, especially in burst speeds. The Pro can keep it going longer because of the active cooling, but at the same time, doesn't really give you a massive advantage unless you are doing like long code compiling, but because it compiles it so fast, it doesn't have to keep going for as long. There's a lot of trade-offs there. Phil Rosaleek, why bring out another 13-inch if they have the bombastic MacBook Air? Absolutely. Excuse me. Yuri Tech, iCave Answers, what are your thoughts on the S22 Ultra? I know nothing about it. I didn't watch the event. I don't care. And nobody else does, by the sounds of it, either, because it wasn't even trending on Twitter, I don't think. James Apple, I can't keep dig. I don't trust the ones that said there were multiple events coming in September. Oh, so Digitimes ain't tricking me this time. They have a grain of salt. Regardless of what you think, they've got a 60.8% track record. You know, there's not a lot of the leakers that are over 75, so they're not miles off the ballpark. And if you were to completely guess, there's so many things that could happen. It's not even like a 50-50 would be a bad track record. Rod Tech, oh hi, we haven't spoken before. If the MacBook ain't coming, I can't. If the MacBook that is coming can't compete with the MacBook Pro, it may just have the ports and not the power. I think the screen is the only thing that needs upgrading. The displays on the 13-inch MacBook Pro are great. The same as on the MacBook Air. They look fantastic. I mean, they're not mini LED. That does need that extra thickness, which is why the lid is thicker on the new MacBook Pros. But they're very good. Lit 8, the news drought seems to be slowly ending. Fingers crossed, my friend. Fingers crossed. I really hope that's true. This might be the best video I've ever done with Cupertino collection featured in it. Just saying. iCaveDave.com/merch. Sharon B, what date do you have for the March event, 8th or 22nd? I think the 8th. The 8th is looking really promising at the moment. And if that is the case, then we would get our invitations on the 1st, which would be really cool. So that's like 3 weeks away. Pretty awesome. Rod Tech, I'm just waiting on the Air M2. Yeah, I mean, we're going to know how it's going to perform in March, all being well, as long as it comes in those MacBook Pros. But as I've said in the past as well, they've already done test production on M3 chips. So the idea that M2 isn't ready or that the chip shortage is causing problems, it's not. The M series chips are not affected by the chip shortage. The stuff that's affected by the chip shortage potentially is the other stuff that gets thrown onto the boards as well. So don't worry about the M series chips themselves. I don't think that's an issue with chip shortages at all. And I do still think as well that actually the reason that they're still constrained on supply for the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros is the displays. I think those still don't have the high enough yields to get loads out of the factory quick enough. And that is why maybe Apple was going to go for a 14-inch MacBook Pro. Maybe they've pushed that off until next year to put the M3 in it. And maybe they're using the 13-inch chassis because it doesn't have a mini LED display. Maybe being able to just put it out using the existing display technology is actually what will allow them to sell a lot more. That might be a decent kind of interpretation of what we're seeing. Phil Rosa leak, they should keep their items in threes: Mac Mini, iMac and iMac Pro, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro 14 and MacBook Pro 16-inch, etc. Yeah, I get that, but I think MacBook Air is going to become its own line. I don't think that the Mac Mini and the iMacs fit into their own, like into the same category, although they're desktops. You're still going to have the Mac Pro as well, so that would be 4 straight away. I'm not sure that iMac Pro is still going to be the name for the larger iMac either. I think we will get the option of the larger display with M2. I don't think it's going to be exclusive to the Pro chips either, so yeah. Mr. Cord's Android like Windows full of crap. Agreed fully. Let's move on. James Apple, why do you think the M1 MacBook Pro is a waste of money despite having the second best battery life, with being the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip? Why do I think it's a waste of money? Because the difference in battery life between the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro with M1 is not a usable difference in the vast majority of cases. I understand if you need to have enough battery life to work a full day. So, like, if you work on the road, for example, and you want to be able to take your laptop with you and not need to worry about when you need to plug it in, that's great. As long as you've got 8 very useful hours, as long as you can do, like, 8 hours of real work on it without plugging in, that should be enough for pretty much anything. These can do, like, 17 hours of light work, with the displays on and stuff. that's for the MacBook Air, and the MacBook Pro's like a little bit more than that. Like I think I just think the Air's got enough battery life for it not to really matter. But let me know if I'm wrong in the chat. I think that's a decent place. So yeah, that's why I don't think it's crap. I just think it's I think $300 extra for the Pro versus the Air is too much for the difference in the experience of using it. Really. Michael Moy, did you see the video on carbon nanotube patents that Apple filed? Better battery life, no explosion risk, faster charging, implications for MacBook Pro and Apple Car. So, I haven't watched that video. That was Max Tech, right? The guy that tipped Max Tech off about that messaged me on Twitter and said, oh, I tipped them off about it because I heard that it's actually going to be in the SE, in the iPhone SE, and I was like, well, that doesn't kind of make sense. And this is what the guys from Max Tech had said, is like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't they put it in the 14? Why would they put it in the cheaper thing? And then I got to thinking about it, and if they're going to do this because it has much better battery life, like energy density, if you like, which means that you can get more charge into the same physical space, and the idea that the SE would get it, yeah, it kind of doesn't quite make sense until you think that they're going to put 5G in this SE that already has pretty poor battery life. Now, if you were to put this battery in, that means that the 5G SE can actually get MacBook Pro-like battery life, like 20 hours of use, that would be pretty compelling. That makes it the phone to have at that price point, I would say. So I haven't actually watched the Max Tech video on that, but I have had information on it. Peter Holman, do you think there will be a 24-inch iMac with the multi-SoC configs or only the larger ones? So, Peter, I think that we will get Pro and Max chips in there, but I don't think we'll get multiple Pro and Max chips in there. If you were Apple and you were just about to bring out a new iMac form factor, the 24-inch, you wouldn't engineer it without the thermal capacity to take the better chips, because you've got a blank canvas. There's no reason it needed to be as thin as possible, other than it looks nice. So I would guess that they've left enough fun in there to be able to do it. So that's my thoughts on that one. Michael Moy responded to James Apple, fast charging on the 2021 MacBook Pros is amazing and actually is like an adder to the batteries. If they had fast charging to the M2 Air, then the extra battery life might be less of an issue. I already think it's less of an issue. It's 17 hours versus 20 hours. James has just clarified that in the chat. Thank you very much. I just really don't think it's a huge difference. 3 hours on 17. How often are you using it for 17 hours and you can't get to a charger of some sort? And also, like, the numbers are very kind of arbitrary because it does depend what you're doing and all that good stuff anyway. Yes, it was a Max Tech video. Yes, that's what I was saying. Cool. Shaking the desk. So, Sharon B. MacBreak recently speculated that Apple might still update the Mac Pro with Intel chips for the high-end customers. Yeah, I know everyone keeps talking about this. I really don't see it. I mean, they might, but Intel have been such arses to Apple since the whole... since the transition, they've started doing quite aggressive advertising against the Mac, and not against Apple Silicon specifically, but against the Mac. I don't think, if I was Apple, that I would want to put any more products out with Intel chips inside. It just doesn't make any sense to me that you would put out more products that are kind of proving the point of the people that are knocking your product. Doesn't make any sense. Saran Bites is here. Hurrah! He hasn't got back to me about the pre-show and after-show stuff, so we'll put him on the spot now. When we get the event, Saran, do you want to come and do a pre-show or a post-show? Either or, your choice. And James has been asking him in the chat as well. Excellent stuff. Frost asks, one more Intel Mac Pro really depends on how they go with the dual quad processor options for expansion, adds, and max memory. So, again, I don't kind of think that the way that memory works in Apple Silicon, because the SSDs are right there and so fast, like, the maximum amount of available memory doesn't seem to matter as much. Obviously, memory is still memory. You can still only fit the same amount of stuff in it, but being able to swap it and using those neural engines perhaps to decide what is in memory and what can be swapped out, I think that's kind of that's covering a lot of the issues. Laclos Dewberry fell asleep. We're glad to have you here now. Anyway, Matt Sorange Jr. No, Matt Sorange 1. The 13-inch MacBook Pro is toast. Nothing to make it a must-buy. Going forward, MacBook Pro will be 14 and 16-inch, nothing larger or smaller. Well, we'll see, my friend. But I do think they're going to recycle that 13-inch chassis without the touch bar and make that into a MacBook. That's my prediction. That's what I think is going to happen. That's it. That's what I think. We are going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes, guys. So if you've got any more questions, slam them down in the chat, and we will try and get through them all before the end. That will be good. Hope Apple doesn't use Intel either, says Sharon. Me too. Rodtech, do you think Apple will put macOS on an iPad? No, I don't. Ever. Don't think it'll happen. I don't see why they would. There's no reason for it. What I do think we're going to get, though, is apps that will work between both. And I think what we've seen with Universal Control kind of goes against Apple bringing macOS to the to the Mac as well. So that's what I think. Right. So let's have a look. Oh, Saran Bites. I'm down to do a show during event season. Hurrah! Saran will be back. That's awesome. Cool, Saran. We'll chat in the DMs. Sharon B, thank you very much. A super chat. Appreciate it very much. Or a super badge or a super sticker or whatever that is. It's getting a bit complicated on YouTube now how the stuff works, but thank you regardless, whichever one it is. Thank you so much. Web creators, Apple AR VR products, would they be coming in this year or next year? Any expectations? I personally think some software announcement this year at WWDC. I agree with you on that one. So I think that we're going to get an SDK, and I think WWDC this year is going to focus a lot on this AR VR stuff. I think they are going to announce probably some Macs, probably the Mac Pro, but I think what we're going to get more than anything else is the SDK and probably test hardware like the developer transition kit with the Mac Mini that was announced at 2020 WWDC, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, that's what I would expect we'll have. Yeah, that seems legit. What else have we got? Phil Rose, a leak. Rodtech, well said. I've often wondered why they don't do it. I didn't read what he said before, so I've confused myself now. But yeah. With all the big strides they've made, why not put the OS on iPads? Because they don't need it. It wouldn't work very well. It's much better to have apps that work on both. I think even more than that, probably to do what they're doing with Universal Control, where you can control your Mac and your iPad separately, but using the same peripherals at the same time. I think that's a really good way of doing it. So, Euritech, would iCaveDave recommend apps for new Mac users? The stuff it comes with, like, get used to that first. It's like when people buy a camera and then they want like camera lens options. Just use the one it comes with to begin with, get used to it, and then see where the gaps are in the things that you want to do. There's not a lot of point in recommending apps because I don't know what you want to do with your Mac. So I think from the vast majority of people, use Pages, use Numbers, use Keynote. Don't bother with getting Microsoft Office. It's an expense that you don't need. Use iMovie, use GarageBand, use stock photos. All of those work really well. Notes works for me better than Evernote or any of those other note-taking things. I just think there's so much that gets included in macOS that you don't really need to go out looking for other software straight away. If you want to live stream, OBS, it's free. It works really well. That's what you're watching me on now. If you want to, I don't know, what else would you want to do? Like graphics editing and stuff. You could use the GIMP, which is a completely free one, or you could use something along the lines of Pixelmator, which is a one-time purchase from the App Store. It's about 2 months worth of Photoshop subscription. I use Photoshop purely because I'm used to it, so I subscribe to it. That's what I kind of do. But yeah, I mean, if you need anything else, it just depends what you need. Cool, guys. We are going to wrap this up because I've just had a message that a big old delivery's arrived for me at work, and I need to go and deal with that. So, good times. Thank you all so much for being here. If you've got any more questions, love it all. If you put them down in the comments section, we'll answer them in the next show. If I have missed any questions, there's one there, Lit8, would you mind doing a collab with me? Hit me up in the DMs on Twitter and we'll have a chat. And James Apple, can I come on the podcast? I'm sure we can do something like that. Not a problem. Thank you all very much. Love it a lot. You guys are awesome. Oh, Peter Holdman, Affinity Photo and Designer for Graphics. Cool. Good ideas. Hit the thumbs up button before you go. If you want a cool t-shirt like mine, iCaveDave.com/merch. It's always good to get the little plug in there at the end. See you in the next one. I forgot how to end it.